Okay, we were talking about the blessings and curses. As you remember, Bilam, blessings, curses, dreams, prophecy, the balance between Jews and non-Jews. Do you remember all of this? Yes? Okay, good. So what we're going to be learning tomorrow is about Mashiach. What we're going to be learning today is the bridge between everything that we learned about blessings and curses and the coming of Mashiach. So I want to go back and explain what blessings and curses are. So a curse could take place if somebody zeroes in on what's really lacking in someone and demands justice. Okay, clear? A blessing takes place if you zero in on what's really good about a person, what's really spiritually advantageous, and you say it should be expanded. So just because you curse someone or bless someone doesn't mean that it's going to happen, because the person has to be a receptacle for it. So I can't bless, let's say, a giraffe that it go to Harvard. A giraffe is not going to go to Harvard. I can't bless a human being that it succeed in growing long tusks. Okay, clear? So the blessing has to do with actualization of potential, and a curse has to do with limitation of potential. Okay. So as we learned already, Bilam's intent was to curse, but God turned it around to blessing, but they were both looking at the same potential that could be used for good or bad. Okay, clear? So one of the very last of the blessings concerns Mashiach's coming, where it says, Darach kochav miYaakov, a star will come forth from Yaakov. So what I want to learn with you today is an important Ramban, okay, about everything that happens between the Jews in the desert and their being able, having the potential for Mashiach to come. Because blessing is dependent on potential. This is clear? So the Ramban that we're going to be learning together is at the first paragraph of Chumash Bereshis. And it's on the phrase, Asher bara Elokim lasot. Okay? So here's Ramban's question. After the whole story of creation, it says that these are the generations of the heaven and the earth, okay? And the day that he created them, that as he does. Now the does is in present tense, which doesn't work. So he talks about the continuum of creation and where it's going to. So in order to understand what Ramban is saying, I want to take you to secular sources concerning the nature of history to show you what Rambam isn't saying. Okay, clear? Okay, so when you learned history in high school, did any of you like history? Good. History is fascinating. Okay, whatever. So in high school, you learn linear history. So here's how linear history is. You pick a certain point. Let's say, Babylon is the cradle of civilization. And you learned how they got together and formed city-states, and one thing causes another until you get, and here we are in the Astrodome of Texas. So you're talking about cause and effect in historical phenomena, and that's how you learned history when you were in high school. This is a bad way to learn history. What's wrong with this is called linear history. What's wrong with this? What's wrong with this, the line begins here and it ends there, but what about everything else that's going on? So the history that you learned in high school is probably pretty Eurocentric. Okay, people lived in city-states, and before you knew it, like they founded civilization, and gosh, after all, they all kind of migrated to Europe, and there's France, England, doing it, okay, got this? And then Columbus discovered America, and what about everything else? So like when you ask who's the average person, the average person is Chinese. You know what I mean? Like the statistical likelihood of who you are is that you're Chinese. That's the. Okay. So you learn history without knowing anything about the history of the world, right? Okay. So in university history, they don't like this. So what they try to teach you there is the cycles of history. So the preeminent historian in the 20th century was somebody called Arnold Toynbee. He wrote a series of books called Civilizations, which he explored over 2,000 civilizations to discover what makes a civilization and what leads to its rise and to its fall. Okay, so it's an extremely boring study. I mean, after a while, you have to really love history for this. Okay, the Sub-Goths. They had the same pattern as everybody else. Just today I was wondering, gosh, did the Sub-Goths have the same pattern or not? Well, look, here they do. Now I feel so much better. Okay, so what's the pattern? So the pattern is that there are several things involved in the evolution of nations. The first is geography. Nations develop on a geographical base. Every place in the world has its own specifics in terms of natural possibilities. So the natural possibilities in a given place are exploited by specific groups of people in order to make their lives work. Okay, clear? They develop an ideology that gives them a sense of bond and a sense of future and potential. They succeed. Once they succeed, oftentimes their drive diminishes because they arrived at the address they wanted to reach. At that time, they're often conquered by a newer, fresher civilization that has a stronger sense of drive and potential and will exploit their contentment. So when you study American history, the American Revolution is exactly that. You can see this? Okay, so that's the story of all history. The exception to that is the Jews. His conclusion was he was an anti-Semite. What do you think his conclusions were? The Jews don't fit this paradigm, and therefore they're subhuman. Okay, whatever. Okay, oops, okay. So that's the pattern. So this pattern is what, by the way, I don't want to sound pessimistic, but this is what you see in the current conflict between the West and Islam. The West is losing in this one. Could you see this? Unless they develop a fresher sense of ideology, they're done. Okay, clear? Because the motivation of the Islamic world is much greater presently than the motivation of the Western world. This could change. In that sense, Trump is good news. He does use words that give people a sense of wanting something. Okay, clear? Which is no doubt why he's so popular. Okay, so what does this have to do with anything you may be very reasonably wondering? So Jewish history is different. It follows a different pattern. But as Ramban points out, we do see a pattern. There is a pattern. It's just not the conventional pattern. The pattern follows the days of creation. So based on a verse that says, a day for Hashem is like 1,000 years for us, we see in the 6 days of creation the following 6,000 years of history. Now we only count history from after Adam because other than humans, animals are not concerned with history, plants are not concerned with history. Okay, so from Adam, we have the historical side, and our map of the historical side are the 6 days of creation. So I have you still? Okay. So here's something you have to know. One day you'll get married, right? Yes, what do we hear? Amen. You'll find the right person. And then you'll have kids. Okay, and they'll go to kindergarten. And because you're already in Afikim, you want to know more than they do, certainly in kindergarten, but I'd say maximum 4th grade. Okay, then it's over. It's going to be downhill from then on. Okay, then you say, oh, very good question. Okay, clear? Okay, got this? But you want to make it through kindergarten and 4th grade. So among the many things you absolutely must know, you must know what was created on every day of the week. Otherwise, you know when your kids are going to pass you by? Pre-gan. Got this? In pre-gan, they know it was made on every day. So when they say, and ma bara Hashem b'yom hashelishi, and you don't know, it's over and they're only 4. Okay, got it? It's all over. She doesn't know anything. Okay, whatever. Okay, so you must know this. Okay. What was created on the first day? What? Light, dark, and what else? Heavens, earth. Okay, so that's the first day. So it's parallel as the first 1,000 years after the creation of Adam. Okay, so in the first 1,000 years of human history, the light, which was the main creation, Hashem said, Yehi Or, that light was Adam. So Adam lived to be 930, and he's the first one who could bring light into the world. How so? Everything other than humans exists, but nothing else has vision. Humans have vision. They could put it all together. They could see purposefulness in it. So if you look at a human exploring the Grand Canyon and an ant crawling through the Grand Canyon, the human has vision and the ant doesn't. So Adam equals heavens, earth, light, dark. Okay, clear? So as Ramchal points out in Derech Hashem, even before the sin, this is important for you to know to understand the world, there was darkness. So Adam was created in order to contend with otherness, not seeing God continually. Okay, but the darkness at that point was externalized until the sin. Okay, clear? That's the first day. Okay, second day of creation, second 1,000-year period of the world's history. What happened on the second day of creation? You have the divide between the higher waters, which is the spiritual source of everything, and the lower waters, which is the ordinary water that we drink that physically nurtures everything, with a big space between them. So the name of this big space is Rakia, which in English is firmament, which is a word that I have never heard anybody used in any other context. Like, you know, wow, isn't that firmament something? Okay, no, okay, whatever. So the second 1,000-year period of the world's history had a hugely important event. The event was the Great Flood. The Great Flood was the worst calamity to ever affect the world. Okay, it makes Hiroshima look like nothing. Okay, the Great Flood was one in which the people who live for spirit, who have a sense of the upper waters, were separated from the people who only live for material pleasure, the lower waters. Okay, clear? So the Great Flood is important. The Great Flood isn't the way it's portrayed in children's books, where, you know, Noah got on the arky with all his little friends, the animals. Okay, the flood was horrific. So it should be seen as like the worst trauma of the world's history. Okay, clear? Next day of creation, third day of creation. What happened in the third day? Yes! Okay, don't look so uncertain. They'll see right through it. You have to say, trees. Okay, trees, all vegetation. So this is the era of fruition. Fruition is the proper way to say fruitation, getting fruity. Okay, so the era of fruition means everything began to grow. Historically, in this 1,000-year period, you have Avraham coming onto the scene. Okay, Yitzchak, Yaakov, all of the tribes, the Yosef story, the descent to Egypt, the miracles of the plagues, the escape from Egypt and the formation of the Jews as a chosen people, Kriyat Yamsuf, 10 Commandments, Na'aseh v'Nishma, okay, the building of the Mishkan, the entrance to Eretz Yisrael, where we could actually create a society that spiritually will dominate every other society that will ever exist. So when you look at every other existent society, the moral core is from Torah and was spread through us. This is true of Islam, Christianity, to a lesser degree of Eastern religions. So the foundations were all made in this 1,000-year period. Busy 1,000 years. Okay. What happened on the fourth day of creation? What? Oh, good. The luminaries, the sun, the stars, the moon. Okay, so when you go to the creation narrative, what you're going to notice is that the way it's described is strange. You have God first saying he made the two great luminaries, the Mor HaKatan and the Mor HaGadol. And then you have God creating the great luminary, the Mor HaGadol, and the Mor HaKatan, the small one. They aren't both big anymore. How did that happen? How did it go from two great luminaries to a great one and a small one? The moon complained. She's ready to have a kindergarten child. This is always a play in kindergarten. The moon complains to Hashem. The moon says, 2 kings can't rule with 1 crown because 1 crown can't go on 2 heads. Really, the moon wanted the crown. Okay, and then Hashem says, you're right. And he makes the moon small and the sun big. And you learn you're supposed to share. And then we sing our sharing and caring song. And the play is over. Okay? And remember, you have to know more than this before you leave Afikim. Okay, got this? Okay, however, the story that the children learn is somewhat misinterpreted. The story is that the moon did say, 2 kings can't rule with 1 crown, but that's the end of the story in the Gemara. The meaning and then God diminished the moon, but the meaning of the story, the Arizal narrates, is the moon said, so make me small. That's a whole other story, okay? So the idea of the diminishment of the moon means that there's going to be a diminishment of spiritual light in a specific frame. So the key to understanding what I'm saying next is a pasuk in Tehillim, Lagid baboker chasdecha v'emunatcha baleilot. Hashem says, in the morning you should tell out my kindness, and at night, faith. So morning, when things are clear, as they often are in life, you shouldn't just say, well, things are great, and move on. You should bring Hashem into this picture. So day, and everything that day symbolizes, has to do with truth. What's the right response to everything Hashem gave me? Look out the window a second. Look. Don't theoretically look, even if you're from New York. Actually look. Okay, so you see the tree right here by the window? How many colors of green do you see there? Only one? How many? Throw a number. What do you see? I could see, without looking too hard, I could see 5. Any of you see more than 5? You could see the dark green, somewhat lighter green, very spring-looking green, and brownish green. You see all of this? So you're supposed to. God made it for you to notice, to respond to acknowledge. Okay, clear? So that's what day is about. You wake up, you're in Neve Yerushalayim, unlike what percentage of the world's population? You don't even know a fraction that would describe it, right? Okay, so you're supposed to respond to the day with truth, but the night requires faith. Faith has to do with what you don't see. Truth has to do with what you see. What's the difference between faith and wishful thinking? So here's how wishful thinking goes. I believe in the end everything will be good because people are basically good. Okay, so that's nice, but like, why do you think this? Okay, here's faith. You're not going to like my example. I should one day dream up a better example. You're in Tachana Merkazit. You're in the bus station. You want to go to Har Nof by taxi. You see a taxi. You recognize the company. Don't go into taxis where you don't recognize the company. Yeah. Did you know this, by the way? Not to go into unknown taxis. Yeah, don't do that. Okay. See here it says Bar Ilan or Givat Shaul. It's a known company. You go in and you say Har Nof. Now, could it be that the driver abducted the real driver and is going to take you all the way up to Beirut? Is that possible? Is that something you ever think about? No. Why? Because your past experience gives you the ability to understand the future. So it's not just wishful thinking. It's based on past experience. So emes, truth, should lead you to emunah. You go into the drugstore, you ask for aspirin. Could she conceivably have opened all of the all of the boxes, put in LSD, and then yes, but that's not what you assume, right? You don't have to have your aspirins chemically tested. Okay, so God created a world that should lead you to conclusions. The first person of faith was Avraham. His basic question is, who's the Balabayit? Okay, clear? So, with that in mind, okay, night is the time of faith. Okay, clear? So the smallness of the moon, the fact that it doesn't have its own light, it has to shed someone else's light, is a symbol of faith. So the 4th day of creation is the day of the sun and the moon, the day of the two Batei Mikdash. The first one was the Beis HaMikdash, so to speak, of the sun, the era of absolute clarity, the time where there was an extraordinarily high level of prophecy amongst us. And the second one is the moon, which was only a reflection of the first, but it had greater spiritual force because of the choice making involved in seeing light in the backdrop of dark. Now, the troublesome part of understanding the fourth day is we don't know the Beis HaMikdash at all. We could talk about it, but we don't know what we're talking about. So I had a student once here in Neve, Tziporah Schwartz, who was blind. And the way she became blind was when she was born, she was premature, and they didn't know then that the oxygen level in the incubators had to be regulated. So her retinas disintegrated. So the reason why I'm telling you this is that she could speak about the world without knowing what she's talking about. Do you know what I mean? So I once saw her in Geula on Friday, which I think even if you could see perfectly Geula on Friday is a challenge, but that's another story. Oh, traffic laws? Okay, whatever. Okay, so she was in a store, and she asked the woman behind the counter to give her an off-white shirt. And she stretched and said, I don't want real white. I want off-white because I'm too pale for real white. So she gave her a shirt. She tried it on. She asked the people in the store if it looks good, and she bought it. Now, she memorized this stuff. She had no idea what she was talking about. She memorized the names of colors, which colors contrast with them. People told her that her complexion was too light. You got this? But she didn't know what she was talking about. It was all parroting. Okay, so that's how we are when we talk about the Beis HaMikdash. So one of the names of the Beis HaMikdash was Har HaLevanan, which means the mountain of whitening. We can come in the dark with no faith, with a million issues, with terrible burdens of your path, and leave white. So we don't understand this. But the first Beis HaMikdash had enormous spiritual intensity, and that was the norm. Okay, the second Beis HaMikdash had far less intensity. The major vessels of the Beis HaMikdash, the Aron, the Urim V'Tumim, the prophecy, the continual miracles were not there, so people had to choose to tune into that light. So because of that, the second Beis HaMikdash, in a certain sense, was considered higher. Okay? So the first Beis HaMikdash endured for 410 years, the second one for 420 years, with a 70-year split between them. So that filled up the entire fourth day, the entire fourth millennia. Okay, clear? Fifth millennia. What happened on the fifth day of creation? The lower levels of animals. Okay, so Hashem created the fish and the amphibians and the birds. Okay, what happened in the next 1,000 years? The next 1,000 years was the era of what we'll call primitive empires. Now, by primitive, I don't mean technologically primitive. Technology always progresses because it's the nature of human beings to both remember and discover. So technologically, we can only get more and more. There's no other direction. By primitive, I mean ideologically primitive. So they had empires that conquered for the sake of conquest. They had no particular ideology. So you like history. So tell them about Charles Martel and the Battle for Vienna. Do you remember this? This isn't all that ancient, but whatever. It's leading up to the next millennium, which is the last 1,000 years. Which is like these senseless conquests, which you might have heard, Genghis Khan. I said this in a class once. I said, Genghis Khan, and somebody said, I know Genghis Khan. Isn't he married to Sylvia Khan? No. He was like he was the great Indonesian conqueror. Like, there are pictures of like the pictures that people, drew from his time, like vast piles of skulls, okay, clear? He conquered all of Asia, a lot of Europe, okay, was conquered. Charlemagne, okay, these are familiar names to you. These are all people who had no ideology. They were conquering just for the sake of conquest. What kept Europe from falling under the influence of Asia was Charles Martel's Battle for Vienna, okay? So that's the fifth day. The fifth day is the day of the minor empires. Okay, now let's go on to the sixth day. What was created on the sixth day? Humans and higher level animals. Okay, so in the last 1,000 years of human history, which is not yet finished, what year are we in now? 57?
75, 76?
76. Another thing you must know when you have children. Okay, they have to date their papers. You have to know the Hebrew months and years. Got it? Like, if they say, what day is today in Tammuz? Don't say, the 10th? Okay, or Tammuz who? Okay, this is stuff that you have to know. Okay, so when you're talking about this 1,000-year period, which we're not finished with yet, we have the higher level empires, the empires that had ideologies. So this is like the end play of the Holy Roman Empire. This will have to do with the Islamic conquests, which are very ideological. This will have to do with the Christian missionary-oriented conquests. Okay, this will have to do with the rise of democracy, communism, socialism, and every other possible political ism. Okay, clear? So this is also all in one period of time. So I'm going to give you Islam as an example, not because they're worse or better than the other isms, but because they write about it. So with the other isms, there's a lot of denial about conquest being on the agenda. With Islam, there isn't. So the way they divide the world up in the Quran is that you have what they'll call Dir al-Islam, which is the residing place of Islam. So they're supposed to prosper. Then you have Dir al-Kharb, which is the residing place of the sword, which are those who refuse Islam. And then you have Dami, which is a third group for people who don't accept Muhammad as the prophet, but believe in one God. So this would include the Christians and the Jews who don't have to be killed, but aren't allowed to dominate in any way. So if you understand this, you'll understand why the Mideastern situation is irresolvable as long as the Arabs are Muslim, because we aren't allowed to rule Israel according to their religions from their perspective. Okay, clear? So it's not something that you could fix with negotiations. So, okay, not to sound pessimistic or anything. Okay, whatever. Okay, clear? So that's the reality. So this era leads to man. So the coming of Mashiach has to do with the humanization of the world. So now you know the pattern. So there is a cycle. The cycle is similarly one of rise and fall, but it's leading somewhere. It's not just an unending circle. It's a spiral that leads somewhere, and the somewhere isn't the Astrodome in Texas. The spiral is the humanization of the world, meaning the world reaching what human potential could let it reach. So this is, as we're going to learn tomorrow through Smadar, this will involve Mashiach, this will involve everything that has to do with the end play. So all of this is hinted at in Parshat Balak at the end. So it's worth your reading the end of the Parsha. It's always worth your reading the end of the Parsha. It's worth you reviewing this Ramban, okay? And the main thing that I would tell you that's worth doing is recognizing that you're right now in an era that's part of the progression. So when you know about what being truly human is, as you'll learn tomorrow, you have to realize that you're either on the boat or off the boat. You're making it happen or you're not making it happen. So this natural drive that human beings have to leave an imprint is very much part of our era. So I want to conclude by telling you a true story. There was a biography written by a musician, non-Jewish, an autobiography written by a non-Jewish musician. And she was narrating her childhood. So when she was a child, she won a scholarship to the Brooklyn Academy of Music. Do any of you know what I'm talking about? It's like people who go to Juilliard often go there. It's like instead of going to high school. So her mother would take her to Brooklyn from Manhattan every day to school because she, for some reason, didn't think it was a good idea to send a young child in the subway herself. So if you've ever been in New York, you'll know that like the way the subway looks in the morning is like the whole population of Brooklyn and Queens is headed towards Manhattan. So the trains are like whatever you're picturing, that's what they're like. But on the other side of the track, going from Manhattan to Brooklyn and Queens, there's hardly anybody. It's like the disparity is amazing. Okay, so there were people who were going from Manhattan to Brooklyn, so they got to see each other. It was the same people every day. So even in New York, when you see the same people every day, month after month, first there's eye contact, and which in the subway is dangerous to do under normal circumstances. And then there's like nodding, you know. Okay, and then there's like the New York good morning. Okay. And then finally you get like a civil relationship. So she wrote that, what would these people do? So she and her mother were on the train every day. Her mother would read the paper, and she would read science fiction books. She loved science fiction as a child. And there was a man who would sit near them on the train in this, you know, the same direction. And he would read Hebrew books. He was like a religious Jewish man, a beard, a beanie, the whole bit. And he would read books in some other language. So eventually they got to talk. And, you know, the mother was saying she enjoys keeping abreast with current events. And he asked the daughter, you like science fiction, right? And she said, yeah, I read it every day. So he said, so do I. Who's your favorite author? Do any of you read science fiction? Oh. So she said, Isaac Asimov, who really is the best science fiction writer. He said, I also like Isaac Asimov. So they get to start to talk about Isaac Asimov books. I don't like science fiction, but other people in my family did, so I read Isaac Asimov. And so finally the man asks her, like, science fiction-wise, like, what's your vision for the future? Like, what's your fantasy? So she said, you know, like one day people are going to go to the moon in rocket ships, and, you know, they'll have like people who could like walk in space suits, and all of this stuff happened. So then the mother asked the man, and what's your fantasy? So he says, like, I want to have an army, but not like an army of conquest. I want like people like all over the world who like are organized and follow a general, and they're just going to spread like goodness and kindness. Okay, I could tell you figured out who it is. Who was it? Yeah, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So before he became Rebbe, he had a very interesting life. Before he became Rebbe, he didn't want to be Rebbe. That wasn't his plan. The previous Rebbe had 3 daughters. One of them was killed in the Holocaust. The eldest daughter was married to a man whose last name is Gurarye, who was a Rosh Yeshiva. And he married the second daughter, so he figured, I don't have to do this. I could have a life. So his plan was for Rabbi Gurarye to be Rebbe, and to make himself like viable in the real world, he studied engineering. So he became a nautical engineer, like a boat builder, yeah? But so he got to America while the war had already begun, possibly a little bit before, and he worked in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. That's what he was doing in the train every day, helping them make ships. Okay, but then when the Rebbe died, the Hasidim wanted him because they already like had a sense of who he was, because he would speak, like he was a brilliant speaker. You know, everything that he was there already then. So they sort of elected him the way Hasidim elect Rebbes. So sometimes people ask here in Neve, like, who decides who are the Gedolim? Are there primaries? Are there elections? How are they decided upon? How does somebody say, like, well, I think I'll ask Rav Steinman. Why do they ask him and not, you know? So from people who learn, vote with their feet. The people who seem to know, who are erudite, and who have a certain kind of empathy and charisma as well as knowledge, they're the ones who do it. So he ended up a Rebbe by not having run for election. In fact, he said numerous times, no, but it didn't work because people kept on going to him for leadership and whatever. So that is the picture. So now you know where the spiral is going. But as you'll learn tomorrow, there is a certain minimum level of proactivity that this requires. So that's it for now.